In every workplace, time and money are two of the biggest issues. Workers want to know, how many hours must I work? How will I be paid? Can I get paid for overtime or holidays? Lawyers must explain these things in simple, clear English. Today's lesson will give you the vocabulary, grammar, and legal phrases to talk about wages and hours professionally. By the end of today's lesson, you will use vocabulary like overtime, schedule, paycheck, salary slip, holiday pay, break, part time, and full time. You will practice the present continuous, and you will learn legal phrases like work overtime, paid leave, maximum hours, wage dispute, and timesheet. You'll practice with a story where a lawyer helps workers understand their wages and hours. Imagine this: a worker visits a lawyer. He says, I am working 50 hours a week, but I am not being paid for overtime. He shows his paycheck and points to the missing overtime pay. He explains, sometimes I don't even get a break. The lawyer listens carefully and explains the laws about maximum hours and holiday pay. This simple story shows why wages and hours are so important in employment law. They affect every worker every week. Overtime means the extra hours a worker does after the normal work schedule. For example, she worked overtime to finish the project. Imagine a factory worker normally works 40 hours per week. One week, he works 50 hours. The 10 extra hours are overtime. In many countries, overtime must be paid at a higher rate, sometimes 1.5 or 2 times the normal wage. Lawyers often explain overtime rules to workers and employers so that everyone knows when extra hours must be paid. A schedule is the plan for hours and days of work. For example, the manager gave the workers their weekly schedule. Imagine a hotel worker looks at her schedule. It says Monday, 9 to 5, Tuesday, 1 to 9, Wednesday, free. The schedule shows when she must work and when she has time off. Schedules are important in employment law because they show the agreed working hours and can prove if a worker is being asked to do more than allowed. A paycheck is the money a worker receives for doing their job. It can be a paper check or a direct deposit into a bank account or cash. For example, he was happy when he received his first paycheck. Imagine an office worker opens her bank app on Friday and sees her salary is there. That payment is her paycheck. Lawyers sometimes review paychecks to check if overtime or holiday pay is included correctly. A salary slip or pay slip is a piece of paper or digital document that explains how a worker's pay was calculated. For example, the salary slip shows deductions for tax. Imagine a worker earns $500 in 1 week. His salary slip shows $500 gross pay, minus $50 tax, minus $20 Social Security, leaving $430 net pay. The slip is proof of what the worker earned and what was deducted. Lawyers may check salary slips to see if an employer followed the law. Holiday pay is the money a worker gets while on vacation. For example, she received holiday pay during her vacation. Imagine a worker takes 1 week off in December. Even though she does not work that week, she still receives her normal salary. This is holiday pay. Some countries also require higher pay if a worker must work on a public holiday. Lawyers often advise workers on their rights to holiday pay. A break is a short rest during the workday. For example, workers take a break after 4 hours. Imagine a cashier in a supermarket works from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. She gets two 15-minute breaks and one 30-minute lunch break. Breaks are important for health and safety. If breaks are not given, lawyers may say the employer is violating labor law. Part time means working fewer hours than a normal full time job. For example, she has a part time job, only 20 hours per week. Imagine a university student works part time in a cafe. She studies in the morning and works 4 hours in the afternoon. She is not a full time worker, so she may not receive the same benefits. Lawyers often compare rights between part time and full time employees. Full time means working the standard hours each week, usually 40 hours to 48 hours. For example, he works full time as an accountant. Imagine a full time office worker works Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. He gets a regular salary, holiday pay, and other benefits. Many labor laws set rules based on whether a worker is part time or full time. Lawyers must know these definitions to explain workers' rights clearly. The present continuous is used to describe actions happening right now or things happening around this moment in time. The form is simple: subject plus is or are plus the verb and the ing ending. For example, she is working overtime. This is happening now. They are taking a break right now during work hours. The company is paying holiday wages this month, an action happening during this period. In employment law, the present continuous helps us describe what workers are doing at the moment or what is happening with their pay and hours. Imagine a lawyer visits a factory. He asks the manager, "What are the employees doing?" The manager answers, "They are working on the night shift." This tense makes the situation clear and immediate. Now, let's see the present continuous in real workplace situation. First example: a worker says, "I am checking my paycheck." That means he is doing this action right now, and maybe he notices that overtime is missing. Example 2: union leaders tell a lawyer, "We are negotiating hours with management." That means the negotiation is happening during this period, not just one moment. Third example: a lawyer says he is asking about holiday pay in his contract. The client's question is happening right now. Now, the present continuous shows actions as they happen. It's very useful for lawyers and workers when talking about wages, hours, and even workplace disputes. Paid leave means the worker is not working, but still receives their normal salary. For example, she took paid leave for her vacation. Imagine an employee takes 2 weeks of holiday in July. During that time, she is not working, but her paycheck continues. That is paid leave. There are different kinds of paid leave. There's vacation leave, sick leave, maternity or paternity leave. Lawyers must explain workers' rights, when they can take paid leave, how many days are allowed, and what documents are needed. Maximum hours are the most hours a worker is allowed to work by law. For example, the law sets maximum hours for drivers. Imagine a bus driver works 14 hours a day. This is dangerous. The law may say the maximum is 8 hours per day or 48 hours per week. If the driver works more, the company breaks the law. Lawyers often use this phrase when checking if employers respect labor laws. Maximum hours protect workers' health and safety. A wage dispute is when workers and employers do not agree about payment. For example, the union filed a wage dispute against the company. Imagine, workers say, "We are not being paid for overtime." The employer says, "Yes, you are." This disagreement is a wage dispute. Sometimes a wage dispute goes to labor court. Sometimes it is solved in negotiation. Lawyers often represent one side in a wage dispute to make sure the law is followed. A timesheet is a document where workers record their hours. It shows when they start and finish work. For example, the lawyer checked the timesheet to confirm overtime. Imagine, a worker says, "I worked 10 hours on Monday." The employer says, "No, you only worked 8." The timesheet is the evidence. It may be on paper or digital, but it shows exactly how many hours were worked. Lawyers use timesheets in court to prove if overtime or breaks were respected. This phrase is key for solving wage disputes. Let's bring everything together in one story. A group of workers visit a lawyer. They say, "We are working 55 hours a week, but we are not receiving overtime pay." The lawyer asks to see their timesheets. The workers show records of their daily hours. The lawyer checks carefully and says, "Yes, you are working more than the legal maximum hours." One worker adds, "We also don't get our lunch breaks." The lawyer explains, "The law says you must receive breaks, and if you are working overtime, you must be paid extra." The lawyer writes a letter to the employer and says, "This is a wage dispute. My clients are asking for payment of overtime and proper breaks. If the company refuses, we will go to labor court." Later, the workers receive their missing pay in their next paycheck. This story shows how important it is to know the words and phrases for wage hours. They protect workers' rights and help lawyers explain the law clearly. Let's review what we learned in today's lesson. First, vocabulary. You practiced 8 important words about wages and hours. Overtime, schedule, paycheck, salary slip, holiday pay, break, part-time, and full-time. Regarding grammar, you used the present continuous to describe what is happening now, like "she is working overtime" or "we are negotiating hours." You practice legal phrases such as work overtime, paid leave, maximum hours, wage dispute, and timesheet. And finally, we finished with a story about workers who went to a lawyer, showed their timesheets, and solved a wage dispute. Now, you can talk about wages and hours in English, clearly, politely, and with confidence.